Warning. This program contains strong language, auditory violence, and mental nudity. It is intended only for mature audiences. Listener discretion is advised. Since the beginning of time, 'twas written in the stones. That one day a podcast would come. Well, that podcast has come. And now it's here to come again. In your ear pussies. Ladies and gentlemen, Unshackled Fury, episode 100.
Uncensored home for World of Warcraft news and opinions. With your host, Berserker, this is Unshackled Fury.
The end of a long year, and the end of an era. But from the darkness comes the light, and I believe a brighter future is beckoning us forward. So welcome back to your uncensored home for World of Warcraft news and opinions, Unshackled Fury. I'm your host, Berserker. This is episode 100. And today is something special altogether. For those that have been around since the beginning of this journey, all 6 years and 99, now 100 episodes, you know that this show has always existed as just a passion project, a solo gig, something that I started mostly out of ego, continue to do out of an enormous amount of ego, but that was where all of this began, was just something that I wanted to do because it was fun and that I thought I could. And I was beholden to no one. I could speak my thoughts. I could riff on anything that came to mind, whether it was about the game, whether it was about the community, whether it was about some batshit insane thing going on somewhere. It was an outlet that I created to be able to do that and to provide what I've always felt was the viewpoint of the everyday player, not a person who's wrapped up solely in Mythic raiding or doing now Mythic Plus dungeon running, somebody who is just absolutely riding the bleeding edge of things, just somebody who came in with a view of this is what the average everyday player looks at for these things. And of course had Nav along the way for a good portion of that journey, and now we're back to the solo gigs. But for 99 and now 100 episodes, I've always done it my way and on my own. But I have, I believe, reached kind of the limit of where I think I can go on my own. And so for the last couple of years, to be honest, I've been keeping an eye out for a partner. Another organization, you could call it a group if you want, but somebody somewhere that I felt would be a good partner for this show, for my brand, if you want to call it that. And I spoke with several people over time. Nothing really seemed to be quite what I was looking for. The groups that I came across, although well-intentioned and great folks and great shows, they just didn't quite have, I don't know, whatever it was that I was looking for. And then I had a conversation with our old buddy Ro, who you may remember from a variety of shows, Rolling, Restart, Realm Maintenance. I think Hearth Casual was his Hearthstone podcast, and he's now out there doing his Final Fantasy 14 glorious dreams. He's living it out. Good for him. Love that guy. And we had a conversation that began a dialogue that ultimately ended up with me reaching out to the leader of a particular circus. And we started having a conversation. And we hammered out a deal wherein nothing about this show will change. So if you're worried that I'm about to say that there's some like insane thing and now it's Unshackled Fury sponsored by some crazy thing, that's we're not going down that road. The menswear products haven't picked me up yet, so don't worry. But what I am proud to announce is that Unshackled Fury will now be joining Warcraft Radio as an original podcast. I believe that this will be a great new home for this show, and will put us, all of us, you, dear listener, and myself, and all of us involved, will put us in a better position to be connected further with our game and our community that we care so much about. And to help me with this announcement, it is my great pleasure to introduce my guest for today. He is the founder of what is now Warcraft Radio, the host of Warcraft's original home, I believe, for Warcraft news and opinions, Saturday Nights with Athelas, and a man who has gazed into the deep blue oceans of Ian Hazakostas' eyes and survived. The man himself, Athelas. Welcome to Unshackled Fury, my friend. How the hell are you?
Oh, I'm so good. What a warm introduction there, and congratulations on 100 episodes, by the way. I think it's a real testament to you and your community that you've made it this far. 100 is a huge milestone.
Thank you. Yes, it's been a long and arduous journey over so many. You know, it's funny because some shows ups and downs. You know, there's some shows they get to 100 episodes and it's only been a couple of years because they're ripping out shows left and right. But for maybe a specialty podcast like this, I take it at a bit of a slower pace. 100 is when I first charted out kind of this year and looking at 100 episodes. I think this is the year when this is going to happen. I was like, all right, we gotta do something. I gotta do something. 100's got to be big. We gotta make a move. We gotta do something. And truth be told, I was trying to line up an interview with, and this is no bullshit, Taliesin and Evatel, and they were very polite and very kind in turning me down.
Yes.
But they did respond, and they were very nice. But at the same time, they're very polite, very British. And at the same time, we did have this going in the works. And you and I, and shout out to Manny from for Azeroth, who's been sort of my onboarding liaison. He's done an amazing job, and thank you to Manny for helping.
It's so official and corporate, isn't it?
It's very professional, and I think that again that's where there's a big distinction for me between Warcraft Radio and some of the other organizations, let's say, that are out there is not to denigrate them necessarily in any way, but the presentation, the professionalism, it's something that I really appreciate. And as somebody who's, a little out there sometimes, let's say, and a little ragey, yes, that is what we do. That is something that I was looking for in a partner for this show. So I want to get into Warcraft Radio itself, more about its history and kind of how all of that came to be and where we are. Yeah. But first, I kind of want to introduce people to you. Granted, your name, your presence has been around, frankly, as long and technically a little bit longer than World of Warcraft has been up and alive and doing its thing. But I think that there's an opportunity here for people to still get introduced to you, maybe get to know you a little bit better, because you have a very interesting background. And not just because I've brought another Florida man onto my show. I don't know what it is about Floridians, but somehow I always find you and then bring you on the show. So shout out to Nev. But you are someone who grew up, it sounds like, around IT. Your father was involved in IT, so you had computers in your home at an early age. Designed your first website at 9, is that right?
Yep, 9 years old.
I mean,
1995.
That's pretty fucking impressive.
I mean, let's be honest. HTML 1.0 was a lot easier to code in than whatever crap we've got going on today. So I'm not going to say it was an amazing website. I had sirens and blinking text and, solid colors and things. But hey, I was 9 and I built a website. So, sure.
I think the most impressive thing I did at 9 was get dressed by myself. So that is really impressive. That is really impressive. So having that kind of existence, where you have tech already around you, how does that kind of shape your view of the world? Do you look at things from a very early age and think about technical aspects of things? Do you think about how certain things might start to fit together, as opposed to where a lot of us just look at a thing and it's this separate entity all by itself? Like, are you already starting to think about how these interconnections in our world are being built?
Oh yeah, it's interesting. I talk to people about this a lot. That when kids are growing up, you ask a 10-year-old, what do you think you want to do when you grow up? They're going to tell you one of like 4 or 5 things. Doctor, lawyer, nurse, whatever it is that their parents do. And that's their whole worldview of what jobs are available, and they just don't even realize what else is out there. And so then you get to college, and you still might not know everything that's out there. And you go and you get a degree in something because it sounds interesting, but you literally have no exposure to all the possible career fields that exist. And then you get me growing up in IT and realizing just how broad the IT kind of industry is. I was talking to somebody about this the other day, how their kid is kind of technical and things, and I was like, well, you realize there's 100 different jobs in IT that they could go after. It's not just programming or tech support. There's just so much out there. So when you grow up in that worldview, it just it does shape the way you look at things. And you kind of feel like, all right, well, if this is my path, this is my path. It's kind of like in the old days when you grew up and your dad was a blacksmith, so you would be a blacksmith. My dad was an IT guy, so I became an IT guy. I built my first computer before I built my first website. And then when I was 18, I got my first job as a network administrator in a corporate office. And that was just sort of the beginning, So it's been a long journey. Definitely growing up in that shapes you for sure. I think I've got a mind for product and design and the sky is the limit kind of thinking, as opposed to being limited by what's in front of me and what the app does. I'm like, well, how can we improve this? And so I've sort of parlayed that into sort of producer / product manager type roles over the years, which has been really fun.
And to add to further cred, your family is responsible for starting the first ISP in Jacksonville. Is that right?
Tallahassee. Yeah.
Tallahassee.
First internet service for. Oh man, yeah. So that's a good story. So when I know, right? So it was 93, 94. So that same time. This is before the World Wide Web had launched. People, everything was dial up. I think the fastest modem at the time was like the 33100s or whatever, 336. That's what it was. Not even 56K was out yet. And 56K, by the way, was always a misnomer because the phone lines could only handle like 50 or 51. But anyway, so we had a T1 line, which is 1.5 megs, 1.5 megs in my basement in 1995 of my house. We ran this ISP out of the house. And I think we were able to support, I don't remember what a T1 supported, but it was only like 32 concurrent modems could dial into this thing. So basically Sprint ran a line in our neighborhood, like to our home, like unheard of at the time. And the best part about this, Berserker, as a young gamer, I had a very inflated opinion of myself because every game I would play, I was always faster than everyone else because
zero lag.
There was no such thing as high-speed internet, no cable modems, no DSL. I mean, ISBN or DN or whatever it was called was like the best you could possibly get, and that was only like 128K, and very few people had access to that. So I hosted a Quake server in my basement, Quake World, the original like game you could play over TCP/IP. I think it was like the first, and it was like being Neo in the Matrix, which is like a very timely reference, by the way, this month.
It is very timely.
Literally, I was moving faster than the game was really designed to be played at. Like I'm pretty sure the net code for this thing was designed for modems, and here I was on a T1 like outpacing everything. So like I just assumed I was like God's gift to first-person shooters. And then as soon as everybody got cable modems and DSL, I suddenly realized I wasn't as good as I thought I was. So,
well, a T1 is no joke because I remember even in 2003 when I was still in college, the dorms had T1 lines, and so this is back in the days of Napster and all that stuff.
Oh yeah,
people were like, holy shit, we got a T1 line, we can download and people. There are people to this day who's not the entire library, but a good portion of their library that they portal around, their digital library of music and everything else, is from whatever they downloaded 20 years ago on a T1 line. There's no question, and God only knows what else you got in there.
I may or may not be able to confirm that like 90% of the music that played on Warcraft Radio 17 years ago was totally legitimately bought at record stores. Yep.
You got to do what you got to do.
You just got to do. Oh, yeah, you do. Yeah.
It's like pirate radio at that point.
Hey, I was 18.
So you mentioned college, and you've been very upfront about how you've had several fits and starts when it came to trying to complete a degree, that you went 6 times, I believe you said, between various places. And it's interesting to kind of see the trajectory of your career in that we are very much inundated with the idea. And listen, I'm a parent and I tell my kid the same shit. You got to go to college. We're saving money. We're doing all this stuff. Like, this is what you're going to do. But it's clear from at least your example that there are other ways to be successful. And that when knowing kind of where your passions, where your intellects lie, that you can be successful out of chasing down those avenues. And for people that might be listening and kind of going through those sorts of same struggles, because college is not just a young man's game. And I think that that's a kind of a myth I like to dispel, is that, you can't, it's not just for the 18 to 23-year-old crowd, right? You can always go back to school. You can always go back. We're always learning, right? Every day you learn something new. But it's something that you can always do. But for somebody maybe who's kind of feeling that push and pull of, should I not? Is this right? Is this wrong? Like, how did you ultimately make the decision to jump out and say, you know what, this isn't the right path for me. This is what I'm going to do. I'm jumping off this train and getting onto another. Was there a catalyst for that, or what helped you make that decision there?
Yeah. So it was less of a choice and more of a accepting of my fate and reality. Growing up, I was undiagnosed with ADHD, and then when I was 27, I want to say, my now wife actually suggested that I go get tested because she felt that I had all the symptoms, and she has it too, though I think we would both argue hers is not as extreme as mine. So I did. I went and got tested, and as an adult found out that I had ADHD, and it explained everything about my childhood and my adult life, and it was this completely eye-opening and just crazy experience. I don't like the way that Adderall and different drugs like that make me feel, so I tend to not take them, and I just suffer with it. But what I've also found is that it makes me very effective at some things that other people are not effective at. There's a whole philosophy around why did evolution allow for this to happen, kind of thing. Because if it was clearly a disadvantage, then it would eventually root itself out of the population, just by natural selection. But the idea that they've come up with is that your ADHD people are like your hunter-gatherer explorers, and like, so there is a advantage to having that in a tribe, if you will. And so like a lot of what my job is innovating and thinking about like where the market's going in technology, and making sure that our company is ahead of those trends and things of that nature. So, and it makes me a very creative thinker in person. Where I get really bogged down is I'm not really good at executing things consistently. So the day-to-day like operation and making sure that things are actually moving towards a goal, I'm bad at. But I can sell the vision of something. I can bring people like yourself in on a vision that I have, or whatever it is, and I'm very good at that. As long as I have people that can come behind me to do the execution part of it, so it kind of works that way. So as far as school was concerned, though, honestly, I can't work and go to school at the same time. So a series of things sort of happened. When I was 18 years old, it was 2004, and a little known game called World of Warcraft got released in November that year. And my freshman semester of college had started 2 months prior to that. The problem with this is that I had also gotten into the closed beta in June. So actually going into my freshman semester, I was already addicted to this game that wasn't even out yet. And so I pretty much just like no-lifed the game instead of going to class. I had also launched Warcraft Radio in like September, October. I kind of started ramping up to launch it in September, and school had just started. And then we launched officially in October, a month before the game came out. A little known story about that, there was a competing group that also wanted to launch around Warcraft Radio, and I had to make sure that I was first to market, so I had to get out the door. So that was the first thing. And so I basically would go to classes to take tests because I'm a really good test taker, but then I wouldn't do anything else. And so I kind of had like a B/C average, and then I had one class that I failed, and then my spring semester I just did absolutely horribly. And it was Florida State University. They basically were like, yeah, you're out, but if you want to go to community college and come back one day, we'll reevaluate, but we're gonna have to withdraw you now. And I'm like, okay, well, that works for me. So I went to work. I was working in an office as a network admin at the time, actually a lobbying firm that my father started up after he got out of politics, or got out of the government, I should say. And so that was fun. And during that time, Warcraft Radio just experienced tremendous growth. So I was out of school, I was working, and I was working and making money, and I was trying to do Warcraft Radio, and I was also trying to go to community college, and that didn't work out either, because again, I can't work and do school at the same time. So that was my second attempt at college, was community college. And that was a great year. It was 2005. We had guys like Total Biscuit and other folks come on to the station and really get started. And that was streaming. Like, there was no Twitch, there was no YouTube. Live radio was about all the internet could handle. Like, there was a significant portion, if not at least half, of the Warcraft player base that was playing on modems. And so to add a radio listening experience to that, we had to keep the bandwidth really low. Like, we actually had a lo-fi option where you could listen at like 32K or something like that. And then our high definition radio stream was like 128 for people that had high speed internet connections that they could listen with. But a lot of folks had to choose between playing the game or listening at any given time. But yeah, so we had a really successful launch. We had a really successful first couple years. Blizzard invited us out to the first BlizzCon, and using my IT knowledge, I actually set up my first Windows Server 2003 installation, and I loaded a very primitive beta version of a video streaming like codec and everything on it, And we were able to stream the first ever BlizzCon to up to 1,000 concurrent viewers. That was all the data center that we put the server in could handle. The data center in New Orleans that we put the server in couldn't handle the amount of bandwidth that would be required for all those people to come and watch. So we had to cap it at 1,000 people. But Warcraft Radio was one of the top 10 sites on the internet that week because everybody wanted to watch BlizzCon from home. And I think they only had like 8,000 attendees or something. But so I parlayed that into a job at Blizzard, which I recently posted about. And I lasted all of 3 months. That was a whole thing. And then I ended up going to work at Sony Online and became a game designer. And I had a pretty good run at it. And then when I was 23, I was like, you know what? I'm living in Southern California. I'm only making like $45,000 a year to be a game designer. It was terrible. I was like, I can't live on this, so I need to go back to school, and maybe I can come back and be a producer. The other thing that was bad was crunch time. Crunch time was like a huge thing in the game industry still back then.
Which we still hear a lot about.
We sure do, yeah. So one of the games that I shipped was an MMORPG called Free Realms, which was like a kids games targeted at like 8 to 14-year-olds. So I'm sitting here working literally 90 to 100-hour weeks, like Monday through Saturday, show up at 10 a.m., go home at 3 a.m., sometimes sleeping on the couch in the cubicle. I got shingles twice in 1 year at the age of 22 or 3 or whatever. Yeah, I gained so much weight. They were feeding us like catered dinners every night. And I was writing at a 3rd grade level. And that will rot your brain if you do it long enough.
Yes, it will. Absolutely.
So it's like, I'm going to go back to school. So I ended up at the University of Advancing Technology, which is down in Tempe, Arizona, just outside of Phoenix. And I went there for a year, or really 2 semesters. My first semester, I didn't have to work. I got straight A's. It was amazing. My second semester, I had to get a job because I paid out of pocket for the first semester. The second semester is like $10,000 a semester tuition, which for me was a lot, plus room and board and all that.
Still a lot.
Oh yeah. So then I had to work. And so as soon as I started working, everything fell off. And so I ended up dropping out, moved back to Florida, but I was able to parlay my experience as a game designer where we were doing a lot of agile project management. I was able to parlay that into a project management position at the company that I still work for today, 11 years later. I never thought I'd work at the same place for 11 years. Kind of crazy. So, and then I tried to go back to school 2 or 3 times. I went online, whatever. And eventually, when I found out I had ADHD, I was just like, the model that universities use is not conducive to people like me. When you have a finite amount of time to do assignments and things and you don't let people work at their own pace, that's not the way that here's the thing. I learn everything. You put a test in front of me and I have 2 hours to sit down, I will ace that test because it's not that I'm not listening, it's not that I'm not reading, but when you ask me to sit down and write a 30-page paper, the amount of focus that's required to do that is not, that's not the way that I work. I'm a multitasker. I'll do 10 things at once. You ask me to do one thing for 10 hours, not going to happen, especially when it's like, okay, this week, here's a 30-page paper. This week, go read 100 pages and do a thing. I'm like, okay, if I could do this class over 12 months, I might eventually get there. But like, I can't do semesters. I just can't. So eventually I was like, you know what? I'm a vice president of technology now. Do I really need a degree? I think I'm done. I'm done with this. I'm not doing it again. Yeah. No.
I made it.
Yeah. So there's the long-winded answer to college. So I guess my advice to folks would be, if you're saving up for your kid to go to college, stop thinking of it as a college fund. Think of it as a get them out of the nest fund. Like whether it's college they go to or a trade school or those online Google certificates that they offer now to get into tech, like whatever it is, like just make it a getting them out of the nest fund to help them find their start, to help them get educated in some way so that they can get their foot in the door and start a career. But don't be so tied down to this idea of a stupid piece of paper that's going to take 12 months to get your diploma so you can put it in the backdrop of your video conference. Like, it's pointless.
Well, that's great advice because it is an evolving world in that way. And we've seen even here in California with the University of California system is doing away with the SAT as part of admissions.
Thank
and that's
God.
something
Thank
that's
God.
And that's been around since time immemorial, and it was something that we all sweated, and we did the PSATs and took all that stuff, and people would just, my sister, she's not going to listen to this. She doesn't care if I say this. She was like vomitous over this. It was the anxiety and everything else, and she's one of the smartest, most diligent, hardworking people, and I'm a lazy ass fuck, and I got a higher score than her, and it wasn't even close.
Same.
Right? And it's like, I joke about this a lot, is I'm probably undiagnosed somewhere because I exhibit too many symptoms of where like I can hyper focus on one thing, or there's just certain little bits in there where it's funny that you say you can't focus for long periods of time. I have to focus on like one thing, and that's it. Where when I was told I was smoking the Thanksgiving turkey, I was watching turkey videos at 1 a.m. like I'm supposed to be sleeping, but I'm like, how do I get the right smoke on this turkey? And it's just singular focus, and it's funny how your brain works that way, and it does seem like institutions of higher learning, let's say, are kind of coming around to this aspect of intellectual diversity, or we talk about people who are neurodivergent and have different needs, and coming around to try to create a more holistic environment around that, where you're not just taking one slice of the applicant pie. Yeah. And that's very hard, because the people that are doing the application processing, they're trained to be like, this is the way, this is all we know.
This is the profile we want.
Yeah, exactly right. Because these are the people that are going to be our alumni who are going to give us money later, because that's really what they care about. And that's my speech on that. So 18 years old. Let's go back. 18 years old, and you decide, all right, I've been in this beta, and I'm jamming on World of Warcraft, and now is the time to do a radio show. What prompts you to think that is the outlet? Why WoW Radio?
So before WoW Radio, there was Utopia Talk Radio. So there's a game online. There's a web game online that called Utopia. I think it still exists today. And in 2003 and 4, basically Utopia, when you create an account in Utopia, you are given a province, and then your province is one of 25 provinces in a kingdom. And those kingdoms are made up of 25 random players. Now, there are people that game it and try to land with the people that they want to be with to kind of, basically, what's the word for it? Like
form an alliance.
Stack the team, basically, like with really good players and stuff. But, so I was playing a lot of that for a long time, and it's all web-based and whatnot. But so I started it with that. There was actually a website that was almost kind of like the Wowhead of Utopia, basically, where people would go and all that. And I kind of partnered with the guy, and we put the radio player on there. And, we probably capped out like 300 concurrent listeners for a while there. And it was pretty fun.
Good.
Yeah, it was nice. It was nice, especially when you think like, God, having 300 concurrent viewers on Twitch today, it was like, oh my God, that's amazing. So, but before Utopia Talk Radio, years before that, I was in a clan in Quake called Bomb Squad, and we weren't very good. But every ladder for every competitive ladder needs somebody at the bottom. We were the bottom, so
there you go.
Being a bottom's not terrible all the time. So there was one time when we were doing like a guild meeting or something. We were using like Roger Wilco or something back then for voice chat. And he was like, yeah, I'm gonna do a radio show about Quake, and we're like, cool. And I only ever listened like 3 or 4 times, but it kind of turned me on to this idea of it. And so when I was like just messing around in Utopia, I was like, oh, I should totally do a talk radio show. So I did for a while, and I played Utopia for a bit, and I pretty much played Utopia until the moment I got into the Warcraft beta. And then when I got into the Warcraft beta, I quit playing Utopia. The station sort of shut down, but I had already by then, I'm a 17-year-old when I'm doing Utopia Talk Radio, and then going into 18, I started an LLC, so I got a little experience with like setting up a business, and I was like tracking all my expenses through it, and I had some advertisers and whatnot. And so when I went over to Warcraft, I was like, I gotta do it. I gotta do it for this at this point. And of course I had done a little research, and like there was a radio station for like Star Wars Galaxies at the time, and a couple of the other MMOs that were out there, Dark Age of Camelot and whatnot. And I was like, well, let me be the one that does Warcraft. and it took off overnight. I mean, you got to think about it, right? There were not a lot of people in that beta, but one of the interesting things about the beta was that even if you weren't in the beta, you could go and read the forums. And so there were a lot of people that would read the forums just to get like any hint of what the game was going to be like, because there was a ton of buzz and excitement around it. And so the way I grew is I would literally just post in the forums like, hey, I'm going live to talk about World of Warcraft.
There you go.
All these people that couldn't play the game, and there was no Twitch or YouTube, it was literally like listening to a streamer is today. And so they would just come and they would listen. And we had Saturday Nights with Athelas, which was the first show. And at the time it was just Warcraft Radio. Like and then eventually I was like, oh, I got to come up with a name for this thing. Saturday Nights with Athelas. Why not? I'm not creative. And it was awesome.
It's a great name.
We did. Yeah, we had tons of people come in and listen. And for a long time there, like, I was just hosting the server on like my cable modem or whatever it was at the time. So like I couldn't support a ton of listeners, but Blizzard picked up on it really quick. I mean, I had all these old school ideas about how to build a business like then. Like I actually wrote a letter and mailed it to the Blizzard community team, like introducing myself.
Nice.
And it worked. Like they didn't respond, but after my first couple shows, they did send me an email and they're like, hey, I got your letter. This is Kadium at the time, was one of the community managers. Kristen DeMeza is a great person. And they ended up reaching out, and then I got introduced to Ordin, and he was Paul Della Bitta, who's now like, I don't know, he's been like GM of Riot and just different things. Incredible executive. Back then he was just community manager, lead, and then they set us up. They started linking to us on the worldofwarcraft.com website, and because we were the only game in town, we were literally the only audio visual content for the game at that time, until Machinima started picking up, and then Machinima was a huge thing as well. And yeah, it was just right place, right time kind of stuff.
Well, going from that timeline, just to kind of give people some perspective here, you think about the instance, right, which has been around, which feels like it's been around forever, and it kind of has, but even that didn't start until a couple of years later, after you guys had been around and had already started up. So looking at the landscape then, I love that you bring this up, because it's kind of hard to think about or remember back then when there was no YouTube. Right? This is like YouTube. Fuck, it feels like YouTube's been around forever. But no, YouTube has not been around forever. It only came around about 15, 16 years ago. You didn't have Twitch, right? Twitch is, again, still a relatively new. Like, I remember, like, Justin TV and, you know, some of the older stuff that we had.
That was like 09, 10 when that started. Yeah.
Right. All of that comes later. So really, to just try to hammer home the point is that you are the OG. Like, this is the pioneer going way back. And I love how you bring up Total Biscuit, because you have a great story, I think, about him. And for those that either do or don't know, John Bain, who went by a variety of names, but Total Biscuit is one that he's known for pretty widely. He was a shoutcaster, a commentator. He had many hats and titles, and unfortunately he passed away a little over 3 years ago. But he came in to you early and had a pitch for you, and you turned him down.
It's more like we gave him constructive feedback.
So
yeah.
I love this for a couple of reasons. Is one, it's kind of funny to think about somebody who achieved so much. Like, you know, everybody has to start somewhere, right?
He's literally one of the GOATs, right?
He's absolutely. He has his own, like, the voice pack in StarCraft, right? Like that. It's that level, right? A Hall of Famer as far as our community is concerned.
The most popular emote on Twitch is literally his face.
That's right. There you go. Yeah. See, you know. But for you at 18, 19 years old, it takes a certain amount of hubris to be able to tell somebody, I don't think you're good enough, or I'm going to give you constructive criticism. And that's not to say that you were wrong, because I don't know what it sounded like.
I made a lot of mistakes those years. All right, but I turned down DJ Wheat too, in the same year. All right, like, that's a whole story too. Yeah, that was a strange year for me. I had a very inflated sense of self-worth at that point in time.
It's pretty common for a dude that's 18 or 19. Right?
Yes.
We have all gone through that. We all grow. I mean, I hope you listen, folks. If you haven't grown from the time that you're 18 to the time that you're in your mid-30s to 40, I worry about you. So there should be some growth there. But you while there is some hubris, let's say, involved in being so young and feeling like you have these kinds of opinions, you did have a certain amount of confidence. And I do think that you have shown that you were right in many aspects to think about high quality, right? High quality being something that I still kind of joke about, and I think it's probably the number one question that people are going to ask about our merger is that, Athelis, are you sure about this? Are you positive that this is the right idea? Because it's something that I have always strived for, right? Like, even just being off on my own little island, I've always tried to make this show sound okay. Like it's not going to be like offensive to the quality, right? But that's something that you had very early on, and in the fucking dark ages. I mean, this wasn't the time when there was all of these programs and all of this tech and all of this know-how and how to do this. So where did that kind of confidence come from? Did you just have a vision that early?
So I'll tell you what it was. The first microphone I ever recorded on was a $10 mic I bought at Radio Shack, and this is this is like 2004. It was literally a stick, like a thin penis on a stand. Like, literally, it was just a small thing. But you know what? Like, we were recording at really low bit rates, so it didn't seem to matter much. The first interview I ever did was with Richard Knack, who was one of the authors. You know,
well known.
Yeah, big author, but especially in the early days of Warcraft, wrote the War of the Ancient series and everything.
Very controversial. People either really love him or really hate him.
So at the time, you know, I was trying to figure out how we were going to interview him, and like, he didn't really have a microphone or anything to be able to do like a Skype call, which Skype was like super early back then too. I think it came out in 2005. And so what we did is I called him and I was like, I need to figure out how to record this phone call. And so there was another gizmo you could get at Radio Shack, which was like basically a wiretap. So I tapped my own phone line, literally. I plugged this thing in, and it had a little, it was like two sides of a phone cable, you know, the RJ, whatever, little phone.
Yeah.
And then it had a 3.5 millimeter out. And so I did that 3.5 millimeter out into my Sound Blaster sound card, you know, like.
Yes, Sound Blaster.
As a line in like mic. And it sounded so fucking bad. It was so bad. It was the worst. Like, so much of the quality of the phone call got lost on this thing, and I was like, I don't know how this is ever supposed to be useful. So that first interview, it was like, I should have tested it or something first. Like, I should have been like, hey, girlfriend, call me and like, let me record your voice. That's not creepy at all. But that never happened. So anyway, the interview was great, but oh my God, did it sound terrible. But I got to make up for it because they did have him come to the first BlizzCon, and we got to do a live video interview with him on his book that had just come out and everything else. So it's anyway, so where the quality came from, and I'll be honest, like, we had started moving in the direction of better quality, but guys like DJ Wheat and Total Biscuit actually were a huge part of our quality improvements, because Total Biscuit had been a radio DJ at his university previously, and so he actually had some experience with a couple different broadcasting tools that were out there, like Sam Broadcaster, which is still sort of like one of the industry standard live radio streaming things for the internet. And then DJ Wheat had been shoutcasting Quake matches for years. Like, that was a thing you could do back then, is you could listen, just like you would listen to the radio for like a boxing match in the 50s. Like, you could listen to a radio, like, to hear live esports commentary about Quake, like even as early as the early 2000s. And so he was a big pioneer on that too. So we learned a lot from them. The whole Wheat thing was, he was running a group called Radio ITG at the time, which is like Into the Game or something like that. And they wanted to merge with us. And me being 19 and stupid, like, it was kind of like, you know, you're coming on board and you're like, we got to work out the terms. Well, the terms, we weren't 100% aligned on the terms, and so it was kind of awkward too, because when we showed up at BlizzCon, we were live streaming the whole convention. It turned out they brought him and his crew in to do the StarCraft and Warcraft 3 matches. And they literally put our two tables right next to each other. And we had to share a router with limited bandwidth. And let me tell you, the setup Blizzard gave us, they gave us a little Linksys router to plug into. at the Anaheim Convention Center, and like, oh man, the connections were dropping all over the place. But yeah, the quality thing was just really important to us because we knew that there would be other people that would try to do this. And we were right. Eventually, the podcasts started coming out. Like, The Instance came out, and World of Warcast came out eventually. And we knew. So a part of it, too, was like we were hyper competitive young people. And like we didn't like when competition would come up, we almost took it as like, you know, we're going down kind of thing. Like, that's not the way the community is.
It's an affront to your very existence.
Yeah. Like, we're not that way anymore. Now we've got this broad community. We have the podcast directory, which, by the way, if you all haven't left a review yet for Unshackled Fury, you should totally go to warcraftradio.com/directory and leave a review. Tell everyone
Thank
how much
you should.
Like Berserker, or don't. You know, 1-star reviews are okay. I'm just kidding. Don't
That's
do
right.
reviews. But like, we're very open to it now. But back then, man, we're like, no, we have to be the only game in town and all that. So we ended up. The interesting thing was, like, The Instance was the first one that really came out, though, where we were like, oh, like, this guy's got it together, you know, and obviously he still does, and does a great job. But before that, it was kind of like everyone that came out, man, we even had a mutiny once. It was great. So after that
boy.
BlizzCon, apparently I was a really hard driver on my people, and so I had a few people like, we're gonna go start our own thing, and I was like, bring it on. And
oh boy,
like, Total Biscuit stayed with me, and like most of the half of them stayed with me, and like they didn't last 2 weeks. It was so my inflated 19-year-old ego. I'm like, yeah, don't even try. But there has never been another radio station for Warcraft. You know, we stuck around till like 2010, and the quality just kept getting better and better and better. And then we had the idea, though, to go to video streaming as early as that BlizzCon. We were like, you know what, 6-month plan, we're going to be streaming video shows, you know, by middle of 2006. And I had like the infrastructure set up and everything. Could you imagine if I had launched a video streaming service in 2006, 2007? Like,
my God.
how fucking rich would I be now? Like,
we wouldn't be talking. I know that. Be like, Berserker who? I mean, that was what you were saying a month ago, probably. But I mean, now it'd just be like, whoa, what?
It's just crazy, the ideas you have when you're younger, and then like somebody else goes and becomes a billionaire because you didn't have like. And that was part of the ADHD thing. It was like I was young, and I had all these ideas, and I just couldn't focus long enough to actually execute on any of them.
I think that's true for a lot of things where, as we get older, I think we realize we may not be as original as we think we are, in the sense that more people will have that same idea, but only few people will, like you're saying, execute the idea and actually make it something that's viable. And that is the biggest difference. But yeah, you've talked about how, and I love this, and there's a great photo of you guys that WoW had put up of your, I think it's your team at the BlizzCon in 05 or 06?
Yeah, it was 05.
05?
The original.
Since you were, I was not there. You were there. I didn't come into Warcraft until 2007. So like the first couple of years there are lost to me. Don't have any
during
knowledge
Burning
of that.
Crusade.
Yeah, right after BC launched. That's when I came in. But for folks that have been to a BlizzCon, or as I've described in more recent years, we talk about how massive that operation is. When you go to the Anaheim Convention Center, it's like stadium level floor space. I mean, it's enormous, and there's just stuff everywhere. The halls are immense. There's 100,000 people, or however many people are there. It's an enormous production. But you hear the stories about that 2005 BlizzCon, and it's way different in terms of its scale and scope and everything else. So can you describe kind of what the scene was like going back to the very first, the origins, the original BlizzCon?
Yeah, so for anyone that's ever been to like your local Comic-Con, like the Phoenix Comic-Con or even like the Jacksonville Comic-Con, like whatever, like it kind of felt like that. Like it was smaller. It felt like a family. It felt like these were people that you could like raid with. These were, you know, you had such like access to the developers. They were just walking around. I remember, I'll never forget. So it was the night before BlizzCon, and we just decided we were going to do some test streaming basically. And so we set up, and we were just getting some footage and B-roll and whatnot. And we took our setup and we parked ourselves like right in front of the convention center, and different people would just walk by and they'd be like, what are you guys doing? And because we all had our WoW radio shirts on and things. And like that night I had probably half a dozen different Blizzard developers and people come by. Frank Pierce, one of the founders of the company, just came by, and he was like, we're like, would you like a hat? We had these beanies with like the Quest, exclamation point on them. And he put one on, and then we interviewed him, and like it was pretty incredible. I mean, because they just would walk up or whatever. I'll never forget. So we were actually the ones that broke the news about what the expansion was going to be called, the Burning Crusade. So So we there was this. We were just kind of walking around, and we walked up to the door, and there was a security guard, and he was like, "Oh, do you guys want to peek in?" And I'm like, "Yeah."
Oh no! Oh my God! Unbelievable.
And so we peek in. And I pull out my camera phone, like, my 1 megapixel camera phone or whatever, and I snap a photo of this big ass Burning Crusade banner that's hanging from the ceiling.
Damn.
And like I posted that shit online like 30 minutes later. It's like 2 days before the convention opened.
We can't be trusted. You can't give us an inch. We will take it.
I'm like, we're literally official guests of Blizzard. They're paying for our hotel rooms, and we're doing all this. And yeah, I just totally leaked the name of the expansion. Like we weren't under NDA or anything, and I was 19 and probably dumb.
Well, they were learning too, right? They'd never done it. They don't know what people are capable of. I mean, being a pioneer in that aspect, right? Is there's barriers being broken on a few different fronts,
Absolutely.
And one of them is now we have professional data mining and people finding out every little tiny detail about shit we're not going to see for 8 months. And, back then, I don't imagine that they would have known. Oh, God, these guys are going to post something. Like, this is brand new to us. So that, good for you. Breaking news. You beat them all.
It was fun. I'm pretty sure they hated us, though, because after... the next BlizzCon 2 years later, they brought DirecTV in, and then they made millions of dollars on the television rights, and all the pay-per-view. I think it was like a $60 pay-per-view or something that you could do to like watch it, and they had all the high definition cameras and things.
I loved it. I mean,
I will take credit for coming up with the idea for the virtual ticket. Basically, you can thank me for doing such a poor job that they decided to hire professionals to come in and do that from 2007 on.
Thank you for
so
angering the gods. Yes.
No worries.
It's funny that you mentioned the DirecTV thing, because for the longest time that was the only way that most of us could access it, because tickets to BlizzCon have always been just damn near impossible to get because of the timing and how it works. And so DirecTV, when they had that, I was like, oh shit! And I told my buddy, I'm like, I'm gonna order this. Come over to my house. We're gonna do this thing or whatever. It was always, without fail, a pain in the ass to get DirecTV to turn the damn thing on and send me the codes to whatever free ship that I wanted. Yeah. And I would we would routinely miss stuff because I'm on the phone with customer service going, you have to turn this on now. It starts at 10 a.m. I'm good. And imagine this poor customer service person who's hearing this nerd on the other end of the phone going, I'm going to miss the opening ceremonies to BlizzCon. Yeah. Don't you understand? Like,
that's awesome.
Oh, those poor people. I always weep for customer service people. Be nice to customer service people. I just
yes, please. I used to be one. It's very important.
I used to work in insurance, getting old ladies to yell at me about the fact they backed into somebody in a parking lot is terrible. So be nice.
So funny.
So 2005. So 2004 to 2006 is the Saturday Nights with Athelas era, and then you depart, you get your job with Blizzard, and I do want to talk about that a little bit later in kind of connection with some other things. But you hand the reins over to Total Biscuit and a few other folks, and they continue to produce content. It's getting better. It's going on. And then 2010 is about the time, early 2010, like January, I think 3rd is the date when it closed down and folks kind of went their separate ways. And Total Biscuit continued to be, I know, at least from his career, I think I paid attention to the most just because I saw him in more places. Like, he was one of the first people I ever saw that was critical of things, and I remember Ro even telling me one time, he's like, did you ever hear the show Blue Please? Because you kind of remind me of that show. And I was like, yeah, Total Biscuit. I'll take that as a compliment. But for 9 years, essentially, almost 10 years, Warcraft Radio was silent. And people are off doing their own thing. And you guys are a part of the history of the game and kind of the fabric of our community. But then August of 2019, I think, is when you guys come back. And this whole machine gets, unearthed and re-energized, and out of the crust it comes and, breaks all the chains and does its thing. What? I know Classic, I think Classic kind of played a part in this. The creation of Warcraft Classic played a part of this, but what was the emphasis for wanting to revive this brand, to bring it back? Because since this time, you guys, and I want to talk about this too, is you guys have grown and continued to branch out and do different things. But what was, after all of this time and the journey that you've been on, personally, professionally, all these other things, what makes you come back and go, you know what? Now is the time when I'm going to bring Warcraft Radio back.
It's interesting, and I don't know if I've ever told this part of the story before. But honestly, when Total Biscuit passed away in 2018, there were a number of us that used to work on the station that got together in a Discord, and we were all talking about, how sad everything was, and kind of just sharing memories and things. And at one point, we actually talked about trying to put together some kind of like memorial documentary type thing, like charting his life and career and content creation and things like that. And we worked on this thing for probably 6 months, but, the level of, I think there were some people that we really wanted to interview as part of it that we weren't able to line up. And so eventually it kind of petered out, and, there were some other pieces that were produced, about his life. And so we felt like it wasn't a need that needed to be filled anymore, I guess, at that point, because others had done it and done a good job of it. So we ended up not doing that. But as part of that, suddenly you had the band back together, and then, Classic gets announced, and we're just like, anybody else miss doing this? So we started talking, and, I had been itching to get back in content creation for years. So when Warcraft Radio shut down, Total Biscuit and I actually did a live show together to kind of close it down, because we were the two people that had led it at one point. WoW Radio, as we called it at the time. And we kind of went 3 separate ways. So, one of the things that TB, as we called him, told me back in 2010, it was actually advice that he had gotten from DJ Wheat. DJ Wheat was like, look, if you want your career to take off, you really need to go at it solo. Like, you can't be an organization leader and be a wildly successful content creator. Like, it's just not possible to do both effectively. And we hadn't seen anyone else do it. And I would say Wheat knows a little thing or two about content creation, considering now he's like he was until recently the director of all that over at Twitch and helping people grow their content creation careers and things. So it was interesting advice that he'd given. And so, there was some debate at the time about kind of, does Athelas want to come back in and take this thing back over? Do we just like shut it down completely? And ultimately the decision was made to shut it down completely. And we kind of went in 3 different directions. So, TB went and started Cynical Brit, which was basically him and his wife, Jenna. And then you had a couple folks go and start something called Versus the World Productions, which was Octail and Hordak and a few other people, No Mize and whatnot, that went off and did that. And then the rest of us started up a little outlet called Original Media for Gamers, or OMFG is the acronym. We thought we were nice. We were very clever.
Very clever.
And, yep. And so we this was right at the time though when live streaming had started up. And so at the time nobody was sure kind of which platform was going to be successful. So it was either going to be, we had Justin TV had started, livestream.com, there was Ustream. Those were kind of the big ones.
Ustream, yes.
Yep. So we picked livestream.com. And suddenly I was a StarCraft 2 commentator. And this was during the Wings of Liberty beta.
Oh,
and so yes. I was killing it. I actually was doing a really good job, I thought. This is when I was back in college. I was in Phoenix, so I had a lot of time to do this stuff. And I was doing, I wasn't ever like on camera, because it hadn't quite evolved to that point yet. But I was streaming the game, and I was being an observer and kind of live commentating and things. So even on like Team Liquid's website, they used to have a side panel that would show like the featured streams that were up, and we started OMFG Esports Live, which was like our StarCraft 2 show, and we did it like twice a week. And literally, I had producers that would go and troll the diamond ladders in StarCraft 2 and just like find people to do show matches. Be like, hey, do you want to come on and do this thing? And like, we'll pay like, $50 to whoever wins the match or something like that. And it was a great thing. And then right at that time, Total Biscuit also got into StarCraft 2, and obviously he kept doing it, and I did not. And then the rest is history. So clearly, he was such a part of the fabric of that game, like at the level of like an Artosis and Tasteless and all those guys. So
yeah.
But so did that for a while, and then in 2015, when Overwatch was coming out, I was like, I gotta do an Overwatch show. We're gonna make it like Sports Center, ESPN, like the whole thing. And so I was working with some buddies. This is 6 years ago now, and we had one of them had this big living room, but he didn't really use it because it was a big house that he'd grown up in, and his mom had passed away, and like so he had all this space in the house, and so we had like green curtain. We were trying to build a studio basically, and then I ended up getting married that year, and I ran out of money because my wedding was really expensive, and so we quit working on it.
That'll learn you.
Yeah, but no, I had guys at Twitch that were like, this is an amazing concept. Like, when you do it, we'll help promote it. We'll put it on the front page. That was back in the day when like Twitch was really helpful about helping people become successful that were new. And so that was my other thing. And so that year, 2015 and 16, I actually went to BlizzCon both of those years because I was trying to make the connections to get back in to do this Overwatch production. And in 2015, I went back, and there's a whole story there with Total Biscuit 2 where he was there, and I think he was there on behalf of like Nvidia or something, and they had him doing like an autograph signing thing. And of course he was also doing some commentary around StarCraft 2 while he was there. It was the first time I've seen him since BlizzCon 2005, so it's been 10 years since I've seen him in person. Wow. And like just the look on his face when he saw me was like, oh my god, blast from the past kind of thing. And that night he got my wife and I my best friend and I my wife came the following year, into the Twitch party as like guests. And so I get into the Twitch. Yeah. So I go into the Twitch party in 15, and I make all these connections while I'm there, just meeting people. There's a photo of John and I, that I put on Twitter back then. And, funny story from that night. So, my buddy John is really passionate about StarCraft at the time, and Heroes of the Storm a little bit later. And he goes and he's getting a couple of beers for us at the bar, and for him it was like the best night of his life because he met the guy. So he used to be really big into YTMND. You're the Man Now, dog.
Oh yes.
And like lots of memeing and things, and like he had some really popular ones on there. And he runs into the guy that like created the Chocolate Rain meme or whatever.
Oh, Tezonde.
Yeah.
Yes.
They chatted forever. They chatted for a while. And then he's backing away from the bar with beers, and he bumps into somebody and spills beer all over this guy's sport coat. Guy turns around. It's Artosis. And he's just like, I'm so sorry. It's hilarious, man. But so I made all these connections there, and then the show didn't ever happen. And then a few years later, 4 years later, I go to the 16 BlizzCon, and then 19 comes around, and I've made all these connections years later, and I start reaching out to them again, and it kind of helped us get our foot off the ground, if you will. And so the other thing we did in 19 was we decided we wanted to launch with a bunch of content already created. So I did some interviews with some former developers. I did an interview with Perculia at Wowhead. And then the big interview that kind of put us on the map, still one of my most popular YouTube videos to date, was my wife and I went to Europe to go to Belgium for 17 days and just drink beer at monasteries because we love beer. Pretty awesome. And while we're there, I had spent like 2 months trying to find the guy, but I found Dives, who was like the original like minus 50 DKP guy.
Yeah, I know this.
I found him, and I found his voice, and it sounded just like him. And he flies up from Cyprus to meet us in the Netherlands, and I interviewed him. And so the day we relaunched, our stream had a little countdown. And what we did is we had a 30-minute loop of just like classic WoW radio, like clips and things, and then countdown. And then our first ever live stream starts up with the minus 50 DKP video. And, you know, people are laughing and whatever. And then like 30 seconds into it, though, it flips to an image of him talking. And so the next, it's like a 2-minute trailer and just like chat. We had like 1,300 people show up to our first live stream, like out the gate. Thanks to Wowhead for like linking it and everything. And yeah, it just like blew up. And so we had this like really fortuitous start. People were highly supportive and all that. But then eventually we realized like podcasts don't do well on Twitch. They just don't. Like even The Instance, which has probably more downloads than any other Warcraft podcast out there.
Yeah.
It's not just Warcraft now. Like even them, I think, is like under 200 concurrent viewers when they're doing their live recording. So we eventually realized like this isn't the platform for that. So we still use it for events, and we still have a couple shows that like to do it live there, and we let them, you know, but we know it's probably not the growth area. And so then that led us to, well, do we relaunch the radio platform? And we have now, and there's a Warcraft Radio app on iOS and Android, and your show will have a time slot on that.
Yes.
Not live necessarily, unless you want to, but it would be, you know,
Keep making the pitch.
I do, but you'll have a recording slot, and you know, people can tune in to listen on the radio, you know, once or however often. So, yep.
Yeah, it's amazing to kind of walk through this story, and it's one of the big reasons why I wanted to kind of do it this way is that, you know, in internet history time, 2004 might as well be the fucking Stone Age, like a billion years ago. I mean, you think about 2004, you know, we had recently just invaded Iraq. Right, you know, Bush had just come into his second term. I mean, this is kind of like the climate and the era. You know, American Idol was still like kind of in its earliest forms. I think it was a totally different world back then. And so to have that leap where you have at 18, you're doing this thing, and now you're 35, 36, and you're 35. You know, coming back and reaching that far back, and you have that long of a history kind of to pull from and to draw from, I think is really unique. And again, it's one of the reasons why, because personally I felt like yourself, Warcraft Radio, this whole production, like it felt like it was the right marriage, because you have that long vision, because it is momentary. I mean, as much as my heart and soul as I pour into every episode, and I know every single one of you who listens to this just absolutely treasure it like it's your next child, it's disposable content. And I know that once people have listened to an episode, you're moving on to the next thing. I mean, I listen, you know, there's a barbecue podcast that I love by the How to Barbecue Right guy, Malcolm Reed. Great podcast. And he and his wife do an amazing job. But as soon as it's over, I'm moving on. I'm picking up my kid. I'm doing whatever I got to do, right? Yeah. It's like that's kind of the nature of what we do. But I like how, especially, you know, and I want to ask about this, is that you're very forward looking. You have this history, and you're established. You have kind of this working knowledge base reaching over this span of time about what works, what doesn't work, trying to find that identity. And it does feel like over the last couple of years, Warcraft Radio is again trying to kind of find where that balance point is, because if you look at, you know, like the YouTube, and you look at the Twitch, you know, and the channels and the shows that are active or inactive or have been a part of it in the last couple of years or are no longer a part of it or coming in like myself or whatever, it feels like there's still kind of an equilibrium that's trying to be reached to some extent. So for folks coming in that may not be as familiar with the platform itself, because there's Warcraft Radio, the directory, right, which is part of the whole, right? But that's, I think more people are familiar with that I have come in contact with. Oh, the directory, I know the directory, whatever. Warcraft Radio proper, the shows within, kind of the community within, which I have come to learn there are a shit ton more people involved behind the scenes than I had realized. There's a lot of folks involved in this project. Looking at that, how would you describe Warcraft Radio as it exists today, and who's involved?
Yeah, so it's, at its core, it is a podcasting network, and so it is a group of shows that cover similar content, primarily World of Warcraft, but also, you know, Hearthstone. We had a Hearthstone show for a while. We looked at a Heroes of the Storm show for a minute there, you know. So it's a variety of shows that kind of cover a similar topic. What's a little bit different about us compared to other podcasting networks historically has been that most podcasting networks are not focused on a particular game. They might be focused on games, but we were hyper-focused on a particular product, specifically World of Warcraft in that community. And so for a while, it was, you know, this group of podcasts, radio shows, some random video content that we would do. You know, our Race to World First coverage is something that I'm particularly proud of that we do.
That was great. Race. Really, really well done.
And so it is a network of content creators, basically. And the idea was, you know, podcasting, there's only so much you can do on your own. And how much further can you go if you're backed up by other people that want to support it? And, you know, for every person that wants to get in front of a microphone and do a show, there are other people that's not what their passion is, but their passion is something that can be helpful to the people that are doing that, whether it's artists or people that are just really organized project managers or, you know, whatever it might be, marketing people, social media people, like all that. We've got all of that encapsulated, and people are doing it for the love of the game. We're not a profitable outlet. This burns a hole in my wallet every year, you know, and I do it happily because I love what I'm doing. And I do love the access that we get to folks at Blizzard and the ability to do those interviews and things of that nature. And producing content, for most people don't make money producing content. They do it because they love what they're doing. And that's exactly, you know, what we are. We're a like-minded group of people that enjoy creating content and enjoy engaging with the community. And that's why we do it, ultimately. So I would say it is a podcasting network. I would say, though, you know, a year ago, we did launch the directory, or really the revised directory. And that was obviously Ro's thing, right? Realm Maintenance was the directory that he had created. We put a whole product behind it. We put the ability to put reviews in place and kind of have cycle the list based on the most recent episodes, and that way everybody's getting some attention at the top and things like that. And I mean, you know this, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all these places, they don't exactly do a very good job of helping newer podcasts become discovered. It's just like Twitch. People rise to the top that already have them. If I search for Warcraft, I'm going to get the top 5 podcasts right there, you know.
That's it.
Yeah, so our goal was we want to even the playing field and give everybody an opportunity to be discovered. And so we have different categories and tags and things of that nature that you can filter on. Whereas when you go to like Apple, they don't really distinguish between a podcast that's about lore versus a podcast that's about, you know, PvP or what have you. Yeah. So we give you the ability to search on that so you can find something more targeted and specific to what you want. So we did that because we felt like as much as we're a solid network of podcasts, we also felt as though the podcasting community didn't have the same level of resources and support that other content creators do. And so, you know, we've started things like a private Discord for people that do Blizzard podcasts and things like that so that they can share ideas and tips and learn from each other and things of that nature. And my goal would be at a future BlizzCon for us to be able to put on some kind of podcasting event. I know there's World of Podcasts, for example, that happens at Con Before the Storm. I think there's probably more that we could do beyond panels. You know, you do workshops and things that are just for the podcasters and, you know, networking events and things like that. So very focused on trying to build up the podcasting community. And I think Blizzard has responded in a big way. They've realized that podcasts are a great place to put a developer on because it's less reactionary than a lot of the stuff that happens on Twitch, right? The Twitch streamer drop-ins are kind of like, you know, what's the topic of the moment? But then you get awesome things like the other day on Starting Zone. They had that fantastic interview with Morgan Day where they went back and forth for a while, and that's being looked at as one of the better interviews that's been done in a while. The long-form interview that I got to do with Ian would have been great for a podcast, you know, about the Race to World First. A lot of times their interviews, they only give you 30 minutes, but when you can sit down for an hour and like really get into things, you know, I think Blizzard is starting to see that the podcasting community is a big thing they need to continue to support.
I couldn't agree more. As a podcaster and as somebody who has made comments in the past that I think podcasting does have, at least I hope, the opportunity to provide a little bit more of a relaxed environment to have a conversation, just like you and I are having, right? Where it's not intended to be sensationalist to a certain degree. I mean, there may be moments where you're like, oh, holy shit. But it's not supposed to be this, hey guys, like and subscribe. Ha ha ha. Like, it's just this fucking, I don't know, way too high energy thing that I just can't do. And I don't pay attention to. And I will just go to a Wowhead or somebody else or Twitter and just, okay, well, tell me what the, big sound bites were. Because I'm not going to tune into that, but I'm also old and crusty, so that's how that I also love the maturation here of where at one point you're basically pirate radio and you're looking at others as trying to steal your booty, so to speak. Yes. Whereas now you are helping other podcasts by putting them on a platform where people can find them. That to me is an incredible part of this journey, and kind of seeing how we've gone from one end to another. And it's something that really resonates with me, where I will always hold certain core values as my own, and it's a through line throughout the existence of this show. But if you go back to my earlier podcast, and I've talked about this before, I'm fucking angry, like sincerely angry, and it's born of a time and a mentality which is not the same as what it is today. I mean, it may sound crazy, but 6 years in personal development can represent a certain amount of time.
It's huge.
And there's even one episode that I've permanently deleted, taken out of rotation, because I just don't stand by what happened there. So to see that sort of parallel track, it's something that I really appreciate. And something else that you mentioned a couple of times is that mentoring is a big thing for you. And kind of seeing that check in at certain points along the way, where did that come up for you, or why is that so important in your life?
It's interesting, right? Like, it's always been important to me, I think. But I think kind of why it was important to me has changed over the years. And I think, having a child now has really opened me up to the ability to teach people. My mom always used to say growing up, that I was a really good tutor, right? And with my sister even, I would help her with homework and things. And whenever, when I got my job at Sony Online Entertainment after I worked at Blizzard, pretty quickly I was put into a role where I wasn't a manager, but I was what was called a subject matter expert. And the idea was it was my job to make sure that the team knew everything they needed to know. I was like an escalation point. I was a guide to, a particular game, Vanguard Saga of Heroes. I got put on that team. RIP. That was a great game. And that was my job, was to become really good at the game so that I could help our customer service agents when they needed help with something. And so I've always been like an educator, I guess you could say, in a way. Okay. And so in recent years, as I've moved up in my company and gone into leadership roles and things, I get a sense of, I guess I get a rush, I think, from getting gratitude from people. And so I have found myself just being very helpful, and it sort of just came naturally to me, I guess you could say. It wasn't something that I actively sought out, but now I really understand the value of mentors. I have a couple of mentors. I've had a couple of mentors over the years. I don't actually have one right now, which is kind of weird. I probably should get a couple. But I recommend it to everyone, especially young folks. You're just getting started in your career and things. And when you're finding a mentor, one of the things you have to remember is that the mentor is the one really helping you. They're not learning as much from you. Maybe they will, but as the mentee, it is on you to find a mentor and reach out to them. Send them a message. It could even be somebody you don't know. Hey, I'm a big admirer of your work. I think I could learn a lot from you. Here's a little bit about me. I don't know if you're open to taking on a couple of mentees, but I would love to learn from you. And it could be someone in your office. It could be somebody in a related field at a different company, whatever. But don't be afraid to reach out. The worst that'll happen is they'll ignore you or say no. And that's part of life. But when I would say a couple guidelines, if you're looking for a mentor, would be, buy them lunch because they're doing you a favor. And also come with a plan. Don't just show up and be like, teach me your ways. Like, come with specific questions and work situations that you can talk through. And you might even send these things to, like, have the lunch or whatever lined up, but like have these things planned in advance and send it to them so they can start thinking through like how they're gonna respond or guide you through that or whatever. So come with an agenda and be the one that buys the lunch, because those, that's the value you're providing at that point.
There you go. Now listen, if you need a barbecue mentor, I'd be happy to provide my services and get some great barbecue rolling.
Where do you're in California. I was gonna say you're not a Florida man yourself. I was gonna say you can just come over here and cook anytime you want.
I would if I could, but here in
it's a bit far.
Sunny Northern California. Well, it's not sunny right now. We're actually getting some nice. Yeah. It's coldish for us.
Yeah.
57 outside right now, so
wow.
it's not too bad. But yeah, I really appreciate, again, just sort of that overall mentality that's brought to the organization that you have. Whereas meanwhile, to shift gears a little bit, typically this episode represents my end of year in review show. That's not going to happen this time for obvious reasons. One being is that you're the more important part of this and the announcement that we're making here. But two, it kind of doesn't matter what else has happened, because in this community, as far as World of Warcraft goes, the troubles at Blizzard have overshadowed everything. 9.1, really 9.2 development cycles. I mean, who gives a shit? Because there's real human drama happening because of all of the insane things that have come out. Drips and drabs over time, but since July, we've had State of California has an investigation. Feds have an investigation. We've had a Wall Street Journal expose. We've had LA Times opinion piece. And all, Jason Schreier and the Bloomberg folks and all this, stories that they've put out over time. That has really been the dominant story this year. And again, something where I feel like you personally and Warcraft Radio as an extension have done a fantastic job of helping to support the Activision Blizzard King folks, the ABK folks, and trying to get the word out about their activities, what's happened to them, what's not happening. I mean, we've talked at length in various places about Bobby Kotick and his failings as a CEO, and the board's failings and how they all got to get booted. We've talked a lot about all of those things, but you folks, I think, have been really good about visibility. Because if it's one thing that drives me absolutely fucking crazy, is that there are influencers or other people that are part of our community who don't say anything and are almost invisible when it comes to this. And so for me, again, there's a comfortability there in looking at, okay, this is the right organization, because value-wise, and I don't talk about this too much, but value-wise, we are simpatico. So that is important. But in reviewing this and the things that we've seen so far, just so people can kind of get your, from the horse's mouth, so to speak, what is your take on where we have been and potentially where we are going when it comes to the Activision Blizzard rigmarole and the whole fucking legal mess and HR issues that we have here?
It's interesting. I will answer that question, but I just want to make a general comment. I think it's very interesting how last year in 2020, when there was a lot of unrest around the world and in our country in particular, there were a lot of brands around World of Warcraft, and I mean guilds and organizations and things that were very vocal about things, and now not so much. For some reason this year, they're all pretty quiet. So found that intriguing.
Shocking.
We're not we're not quiet.
No.
But as far as where we're at, so first of all, I don't think there is an Activision without Bobby Kotick. He is the company. Like, literally, he's been there since '91. I played Activision published games that I bought at Electronics Boutique and GameStop and whatever. Way back.
Oh, yeah.
They've been around forever. They were like the publisher for 3D Realms that made Duke Nukem 3D and Shadow Warrior and everything. I mean,
oh yeah,
so they've been around forever. And it's not that he has like a controlling share or anything, but you got to remember, like, the board members that are supporting him at the leadership of the board have been there almost as long as he has. Like, this is their company. It'd be like, it's like Apple without, Steve Jobs. Like, it's Bill Gates and Microsoft. Like, it's Bobby Kotick and Activision.
Yep.
And what I wish Activision would just go away. Like, thank God for Bungie, like, getting out. You know what I mean? And I don't know.
Save their own asses.
I don't know what the structure of that was, but the problem is Blizzard just prints money. Like, they are so valuable. Like, you don't have an Activision without Blizzard at this point. I mean, yeah, there's Call of Duty, and they could do their thing, but without that, I mean, Blizzard is where billions of dollars have come in. I remember, I mean, it was like 2005, before Activision picked them up from Vivendi. They were already making like over $1 billion in annual revenue, like $1.5 billion in annual revenue or something insane. So it's tough to imagine that they could ever get away. What's going to happen is it's going to have to be an activist shareholder movement. The only problem with that is, the one group that's come out like represents less than 1% of all the shares that are outstanding. So you have to get the Vanguards and the BlackRocks of the world that control, the institutional shareholders that control significant portions to come in and vote. And here's the interesting point though, Berserker. Like last year, when they were voting on Bobby Kotick's compensation package, I think over something like 45% or more of people voted against the pay package. So there was already some really good momentum around that, and I think
very close.
Very close. And so if those same people plus a few more, if those same people plus one of the institutional retirement firms voted to get him out, then he'd be out. Yeah. And if we could just do that with the board of directors as well, at least the top 3, then suddenly there's a lot of things that could potentially happen. But here's a real indicator, I think, of where we're at. Despite all the bullshit that's happening right now, they still just laid off a bunch of Call of Duty QA people when they didn't have to. Like,
yes, they did.
Why? I mean, so that your numbers for the quarter just look slightly better. Like, your stock is in free fall at this point, and it's not because you're not making money. People are still going to buy Call of Duty. People are going to still buy your games. It's because people just don't like you at this point. Like, and they're worried about, the shareholders are worried that what's happening right now is going to impact revenue because people are going to boycott the company or whatever, which is all legitimate concerns. I don't know where it goes, but I do know that until they let Bobby and some of these board members go, I think their stock's going to stay pretty low at this point. I don't know what their agreement with him is, but it's got to happen.
Yeah, it's something that we've tracked on this show since that massive layoff happened a couple of years ago. That was the sort of the impetus for on here having the regular check-ins and when they do the quarterly earnings calls to go through and see, okay, well, what's the health of everything from Activision, from Blizzard?
Those calls are so worthless, by the way.
It's all puffery, right? I mean, you really have to dive into the financials themselves to get, I think, you have to know some of the more nitty-gritty stuff. And I am not a pro of this by any means. Just being a stockholder, or a shareholder, I get this stuff sent to me, so I have the ability to look through it. But just in terms of raw numbers, easy to understand metrics, right? I usually look at the share value because that's something that I think everybody kind of generally understands. Is it up? Is it down? Is it whatever? Earlier on this year, they were well over $100 a share, and now they're just over 57. So they've almost fallen by half. And at one point, when the layoffs had happened, I think their low was somewhere in the 40s. So I think that's kind of the bottoming out point for them. And I don't know, kind of to your point, I don't know what the negotiation is or what the trigger point is, because I've heard some people say or seen some people say, well, it would cost $250 million or whatever to fire Bobby Kotick and pay him off. I'm like, well, they've lost a shit ton more money than that already.
So the thing is, you've got to have cause to fire him. Otherwise, he has a huge umbrella package, or not umbrella, but golden parachute. That's what I mean. Like, if you can find a cause to fire him, then, And so the cause is, at this point, it's he lied. He withheld information from the shareholders.
Yep.
Like, you could just use that. He did not fulfill his fiduciary duty as a member of the board and as the CEO of the company. And that, to me, is cause to terminate without any of the additional severance that's written into his contract. So
I would agree with you 100%.
Now, he has enough money. He's going to hire a lawyer, and he's going to challenge that. So
I was going to say, I'm not an attorney, and I'm sure that some
Yeah.
attorney's going to look at that and go, well, I don't know. Was that
Right.
really
Oh,
in
yeah.
the duty
And
statement?
so eventually they'll settle, and they'll still give him something, and
Right.
it'll be a thing. It'll still cost him a bunch of money, but it's got to happen at some point. Just cut your losses at this point.
I would think, but they do seem committed. But at the very least, I know I will be keeping tabs on that and continue to amplify the voices that are out there as much as I can. I know that you will, that folks at Warcraft Radio will do their part to continue to help the ABK folks fight for what they're trying to achieve. They've put out their 4 demands. In some ways, they're being quasi-met, but they're not being directly addressed. It's a lot of corporate bullshit, and it's going to continue. But we'll keep an eye on that and keep reporting as we always have. Mm-hmm. But before we go, I want to try to end on a more positive note if we can. Looking forward for World of Warcraft. So things have significantly slowed since the pandemic, and with all of the unrest internally, that obviously has had an impact. So what we are used to, throw that out the window. That doesn't matter anymore. Now we're kind of in a different era. We've got 9.2 that's been announced. I had a conversation over Twitter with Jason Lucas some time back, and he was telling me there's not going to be a 9.3. And I'm like, well, I don't know, maybe. He's like, no, there's definitely not going to be a 9.3 if I can give that up. And it does seem like 9.2 is going to represent the bulk of whatever's left. If there's like a 2.5 or something to loop things in, I mean, that might be the best we get. But looking forward in 2022, I think it's safe to say we'll get 9.2. I think it's safe to say we'll get an expansion announcement. I don't know that we're going to get a BlizzCon necessarily. They've talked about reimagining it and what that might look like. I don't have any idea of what that might look like at this point. But looking forward, do you have a sense of when you think we'll get a 9.2 and maybe an expansion announcement?
9.2 will be February, and Race World First will be into February, beginning of March, and then I think we'll probably get an expansion announcement around the time that BlizzCon would normally come out. The only problem with that is, like, if 9.2 is your last patch, are we looking at a whole year? You know? Like, I can't imagine we are. I mean, here's the other thing. They might actually announce the expansion in February. It depends on the 9.2 timing. And the reason I say that is, they announced they were canceling BlizzCon, but they did say we're going to have announcements about games. So I still think that February, March timeline when BlizzCon Line would traditionally happen, which they've also said they're not going to be doing, we could potentially see some game announcements around that. So another interesting thing might be if they go to like Gamescom in Europe or something like that.
There you go.
Wasn't
that where they announced Legion?
It was. Yep.
Yeah.
That was the last one they did there, which I thought was pretty cool to do for Europe. So I think so. I'm on the fence. So I'm wondering, right, because we already know that there's going to be some kind of like time shift between this expansion and the next one. Like we're going to skip forward 100 years or something like that.
How do we know that? I don't know that.
Well, because they've said they emphasized a bunch when the expansion was coming out, like time flows differently in the Shadowlands, and so it's almost like this. They're setting it up as like, we think we've been in the Shadowlands for a year and a half, but actually we were there for like 1,000 years, or I don't know, 100 years, or like that. So I have a feeling that whatever's coming next will be a return to Azeroth, and it'll be a radical change in the landscape along the lines of what we had for Cataclysm, where a lot has changed. Now, I also would love if the announcement was not a new expansion and it was actually WoW 2.0. And
you're one of the WoW 2.0 people.
I want a new engine, and I want a new MMORPG. I want to redesign MMO, and it's gonna have to happen eventually because Riot is going to come out with their MMO, and it's going to absolutely crush every other MMO that's out there the way that World of Warcraft did. Like, it's going to. I mean, I'm one of the people. I'm like a Ghostcrawler fanboy. I think he is one of the greatest designers that WoW ever had, and I can't wait to see what they're going to come out with.
Boy, you're pretty brave saying that in public.
Well, I was going to say, I know he's made some personal mistakes in his career, and those are not, necessarily forgivable and all that. I think as a designer, he's an incredible designer, and I think Riot's going to be very successful, whatever they do. They've obviously been building the world with Arcane and all the lore and everything.
Yes.
So,
yes.
But so Blizzard's going to have to come out with a new game, and we know there are unannounced projects at Blizzard.
For sure.
And I believe a new MMO could be one of them.
I'm still holding out for the StarCraft MMO. And I know that that's like a fool's errand, but it's funny that you've talked about StarCraft and your history with it, because I fucking love StarCraft. I love it so much. Like it's right there. And it's a whole other show where you and I can talk about The Expanse, by the way, and like a whole other thing, with
oh my god,
sci-fi.
what a world, wow.
Yeah. It's incredible. But StarCraft, like, I will stay up till 2 a.m. and watch stuff live from Korea, because I love that universe. I love the story, and I know that it's got its criticisms, but I love the story around it. I love the community around it. I love just the insane energy around the events. Like, it's just seeing a StarCraft tournament live at BlizzCon all the way in the end there, where they have the arena. It's like one of the top 10 experiences of my whole life. It was just really, really amazing to do that. That's awesome. I miss that franchise a lot. Yeah. And I hope that they have something for it other than just throwing it on the coals with Heroes of the Storm and maybe a few others, because God only knows what's going on there. But I agree. I think February, March is kind of that sweet spot for that 9.2, and I do think we're in for a long wait. I mean, could it be the end of the year, another November-ish launch? That's kind of how I'm wondering about it. I don't know that we're going to go back to Azeroth. It seems to be the prevailing opinion. I have heard that quite a bit. I am hoping that we continue on in just some crazy, insane, unheard of, unthought of other land or whatever. But I know that's kind of wearing on some folks being away from home. So we'll see what's coming. But listen, I think we said it all.
Yeah.
We covered a lot of ground today, and at the end of the day, Unshackled Fury joining up with Warcraft Radio. I'm really excited to join up with you folks and see what we can create and see what we can come up with as time moves on, because you have a great group of folks over there, and I think you've created a fantastic team, and I'm excited to join it. So thank you for the opportunity, and I'll tell you, my listeners, the same thing that I told Athelis and the rest of the folks is, you are going to see at least a solid year out of me of content with Warcraft Radio. So don't worry about me going anywhere. I'm not quitting. I'm not going somewhere else. I'm not I mean, I might play Final Fantasy, but I'm not starting a show about Final Fantasy. This is it. Warcraft is the jam. It's going to continue to be the jam, and we're going to see what we can create moving forward. So I think that'll do it for this episode. I want to thank my guest, the mighty Athelis, for coming down and hanging out with me and chatting today and helping me explain what's going on and getting us ready to explode the Warcraft podcast scene. For those who don't know where you are, where can folks find you out there?
Try to use the same tag everywhere. So on Twitter and Twitch, it's Athelis WCR. That's ATHALUS WCR, which obviously stands for Warcraft Radio. But yeah, I'm mostly active on Twitter these days. I was streaming for a while, but I kind of stopped doing that about 6 months ago, just to kind of get some time back and all that. So Twitter would be the main thing. And then, of course, I'm also one of the hosts of the Realm Maintenance podcast. So if you're not a listener of Realm Maintenance, it is a meta podcast, I would say. It's a podcast about other podcasts. And so we interview podcasters, also some video content creators, and we also do a weekly roundup where every week we put out, these are the shows that release new episodes, and we highlight some of what those shows talked about. So, of course, Unshackled Fury is going to be featured on that weekly roundup that's coming out today, in fact, December 5th. So it's those are the two places, the Realm Maintenance podcast, and then Twitter and Twitch and Athelis WCR.
Fantastic. As for me, you can always follow me and the show on Twitter at Berserker Rage and Unshackled_Fury. And you can join our Discord, links for which are in the profile of the show on Twitter and the Warcraft Radio directory. Feel free to contact the show with your questions, comments, or otherwise by going to unshackledfury.com. And you can find this show wherever you get your podcasts. So once again, thank you for listening. Remember to keep your swords wet and your banners high. And we'll see you next time. Farewell.